Urban Meyer retiring from coaching, retiring from The Ohio State University after almost 7 seasons with the Buckeyes, 87 wins, 9 losses, the record. Phenomenal coaching stint, both at Ohio State, Florida, going back to Utah, and Bowling Green. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, striking up the live stream on a Tuesday morning amidst this news. So, of course, this was not necessarily a shock or surprise to anyone that follows the situation, not even that closely. It also somewhat startles anyone who follows college football and is close to or has an attachment to the Ohio State football program, because of obviously a legend retiring is always huge news in the world of college football. And Urban Meyer has given us plenty of news over the past 3 to 4 months, over the past 7 years at Ohio State, both positive and a little bit negative off the field, or quite a bit negative off the field, depending on your perspective. And then going back to Florida, a huge run there at Florida with 2 national championships in 3 years, only with the Gators for 6 seasons. Winning 2 national championships, when you work out the math, is phenomenal in making the comparison throughout college football history. So for me, I woke up about 10 after 10 a.m. Eastern time. Some of you are familiar with my work schedule, my regular work schedule. This is not my work. Unfortunately, many sometimes believe or are a bit confused about that, thinking that this is my regular job. But unfortunately, it's not at this point. So so I have a limited amount of time, but I thought it very important. So I rushed in the shower. I have not watched any reaction from anyone else. I don't know that I'm going to gain much knowledge or perspective on the situation by watching anyone else and their perspective initially for these initial thoughts. But certainly tonight, we will dive into the Urban Meyer retirement from coaching from Ohio State. And you know that this show is always open to your phone calls and always open to the chat room for you to discuss anything you'd like in college football. So we will come back tonight, Tuesday night, at approximately 9 o'clock Eastern time to talk Urban Meyer. I will attempt to bring on all the contributors that I can find who will have a expert perspective on Urban Meyer, and both from his days at Florida and Ohio State and otherwise, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So I will check out the chat room. I will also give my brief synopsis of the on the field and off the field. Let's start off the field, because, of course, that brings a level of controversy to it. On the field, it's difficult to criticize much. There is a little to take away from Urban Meyer's accomplishments at Ohio State and Florida. Maybe the system took away more than the actual results on the field. But off the field at Florida, I believe that during his 1-year absence from the program, from coaching college football after his Florida stint, preparing for his Ohio State stint, and then the way he conducted himself in regards to responding to player issues, transgressions, player rules violations, you saw a huge difference. So at Florida, yes, there are huge questions as to, and criticism that is much founded about his leniency concerning player discipline. I don't think there's any question about that. Like anything else, it's complicated. It can be argued from various standpoints, and I typically, depending on the issue, depending on the person, depending on the situation, I have a very black and white view on a number of issues because of my values and beliefs. But concerning complicated, real issues in life that aren't philosophical or otherwise, I tend to think that unless the person is proven to be an absolute angel beyond belief or something to the other extent on the other end of the spectrum, then there are various viewpoints and perspectives and evidence on both sides of, in this case, the coaches addressing properly that issue. but he was on the lenient side, most people, I believe, would say, concerning his treatment of players and response to their actions off the field at Florida. I don't know about the Utah and Bowling Green. I don't know that anything specifically came to light. Obviously, there was less of a spotlight on him and on his program when he was at those two institutions, as opposed to coming to Gainesville, taking over a top 10 to 15 program, and then obviously turning it into a giant, turning it into the top of the line program that it was, and winning 2 national championships, 2006, 2008 at Florida. Then going to Ohio State in regards to, again, player response, player issues. And I'm going to be pretty brief on this because the football takes precedence for me and what we do here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. He ran a clean program in regards to, again, player issues and NCAA violations, all those things off the field. The two major issues that typically come up for major college football programs are how do they deal with their players and how do they discipline and prevent their players from going amok off the field. And then number two, how clean is the program in regards to not paying players, not fixing grades, not keeping them eligible in a non-specified way against the rules. So Urban Meyer passes the grade when it comes to that. Yes, of course, he had player issues. There were player issues at every institution in school. We could go through the entire scope. We could go through the entire scope of issues and player misconduct at any university, at any football program, and a coach has had to deal with those. So you can pick the coach and pick the institution, and then they've had them because you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds. Okay, the Zach Smith issue, I believe it's much more complicated and is certainly polarizing because there were ardent defenders of Urban Meyer, both with the Ohio State community and otherwise. I had many non-Ohio State fans make the case that Urban Meyer did everything that he could in regards to reporting and prevention and so forth. There's obviously people on the other end of the spectrum. We discussed that ad nauseum. We probably have 9 hours of video here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, so you can look it up if you want debate over the over the Zach Smith issue. The Zach Smith issue that goes back to 2009 with Florida, 2015 with Ohio State, and Urban Meyer's handling of that. I think it's messy. I think it's complicated. I have stated my opinion. I believe Urban Meyer could have done more. He knew that he had a troubled individual who had committed transgressions of that sort previously. He went through the proper channels in handling those at Ohio State. All right, let's get to the football because I only have a couple minutes, and I would like to look at the chat room real quick. All right, the football is beyond belief in regards to the success that was established and maintained at Bowling Green, turning around a program and winning big, going to Utah, taking over a decent program and lifting them to an undefeated record and a BCS Bowl victory, and top of the line success there at Utah. Goes to Florida. That program was losing 5 games a year for 3 consecutive years, going to 2 national championship games, winning those, and taking Florida to the top of college football. When you win 2 national championships in the span of 3 years, very few have done that. Going to Ohio State, I think the legacy becomes a little bit more sketchy. The record can't be denied. The record is phenomenal. It ranks right with Nick Saban in regards to winning percentage at an institution. I think because of the 12-1 versus the 13-0 for Nick Saban, and him losing just 1 game, Nick Saban last year versus Urban Meyer's 2, he barely inched ahead of Urban Meyer. So if you take the Nick Saban run from 2012 on versus the Urban Meyer 7-year run from 2012 on, they're almost identical before you get to postseason play. Of course, in postseason play, Nick Saban has taken the opportunity that he's been given to win championships. Urban Meyer was 1 time and was only given 2 opportunities to win national championships. The other team, it's ironic and very odd that if you go through the college football playoff era from 2014 through 18, that's 5 seasons, that Ohio State has always, every season, to different degrees and different circumstances, but has been the polarizing team one way or the other. 2014, they had many detractors. They were put in. They won the national championship. In 2015, they were rightly left out of the playoff, but any football observer would tell you that they had arguably the best team in the country. They were 12-1. If we were going with the best team or best four teams approach, then Ohio State would have been in the playoff in 2015, but the approach was the proper one. They lost the key game of the season against Michigan State. Alabama basically had the same season, but they were given a path by their division rivals, and therefore they went on and won the national title and took advantage of that opportunity. 16 was the big failure because given the opportunity, they lost to Clemson. Now, the last 2 years, we've discussed this, as you guys know, right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, and you can check out tons of videos discussing and debating the 2017 run and the 2018 run and whether Ohio State deserved or earned a right to make it to the college football playoff. Of course, they won what many would consider to be the second best conference in college football. There could have been an argument in 2017, the best conference in college football. This year, I think the SEC has pretty much established itself based on the field results against the other leagues. Best conference, Big Ten, arguably number two. And of course, Ohio State only lost one game and they went to the college football or were left out of the college football playoff. Will not have that opportunity to win a national championship this year. They go to the Rose Bowl against Washington. All right, I'm going to check out the live chat. Call Urban Meyer in a coaching. If you want to follow and make a parallel between other sports, to get on here and say that Urban Meyer won one national championship at Ohio State, 2 at Florida, and that's the end of the story. Therefore, he ranks and slot him in among the rankings. I think that's lazy and that's short-sighted. Of course, we don't do that here, as you guys well know. We dig and we bring perspective because, especially in college football, that's the only sport where you are either selected or you're not selected. You can't earn your way into the playoffs completely. It's somebody's decision. So he could have won more had he been given the opportunity, possibly, maybe not. And obviously, they did not necessarily earn it either in some people's minds. All right. It's 10:50 a.m. Eastern time. I'm going to look at this for 2 or 3 minutes, dive into live chat again, right around 9 p.m. Eastern time. I'm definitely going to be here to talk Urban Meyer, college football playoffs, bowl selections, bowl pairings, anything that you want to talk about in the landscape of college football, other coaching changes, North Carolina, Kansas State, and elsewhere as well. All right. NASA CTI Snakes asking me, are you disappointed, Mark, that Urban Meyer is gone, and do you think he left too soon? So, yes, I'm disappointed that Urban Meyer has been forced out of coaching by health concerns. We certainly know that the health concerns are real. I think it's unfortunate, and it's just a byproduct of the world that we live in and people's judgment that they make, and their desire to feel important on social media, to throw stones. And obviously, at the end of his Florida run, there is no question that this man has had health issues for 10 or 12 years. So he has had two struggles: health issues versus just being a coaching maniac, loving to coach, wanting to coach, having the desire to succeed and compete and do all those things. Those have been at odds. Therefore, what happened at Florida was obviously he was hit with a health risk. He decided to step away when he had a few months to come back and a few months to regroup. That's what he did and made that decision. Then it was apparent after a year that he couldn't do that. He did not know that the Ohio State job, his dream job, and we haven't cut into that portion of it because of his ties to Ohio State, his ties to the state of Ohio, being a native of Ohio, that he wanted that job and always did. And obviously that worked out for him once he stepped out of coaching. didn't know that Jim Tressel, one of the most successful coaches in the nation at that point, even succeeding Nick Saban at that point, because this was only 2010 into 2011 and 12. Jim Tressel, right there with Pete Carroll, would be stepping down and would be forced out, I should say, because of the tattoo gate. So Urban Meyer obviously couldn't have arranged that, but things worked out in regards to him landing his dream job. And so it's sad on one hand that he has been forced out of coaching, because I was going to be fascinated to see, because of the age difference and because of Saban accomplishing more to date, but being so much older. So Urban Meyer actually being ahead of the curve in regards to accomplishing more, specifically at Ohio State, but overall, than Nick Saban. The run to just wins, winning percentage, and of course, national championships between Urban Meyer and Nick Saban. And I made those statements, and I should try to find those or recreate those in regards to making that comparison. Now, obviously, because of longevity and because of what Nick Saban's accomplished the last few years, there's really no complete comparison. You would have to make the Sandy Koufax type argument for Urban Meyer. And if you don't know or are not familiar with Sandy Koufax, look him up. Comparison between Urban Meyer and Nick Saban, who would be more along the Greg Maddux category. So, yes, I am disappointed. I'm sorry. We can't take calls. I just don't have the time. I should be gone now. I have a meeting to get to and a lot of other things and work. Michigan gets the first win over Ohio State next year. I cannot make a prediction on next year's Michigan game. I haven't seen the teams play the 11 games before. So that's what would be needed. I appreciate wanting to make the phone calls and discuss this. I will be here tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So please come back. Please come back tonight. We'll talk Urban Meyer. I'm sure that's what's going to be on most people's minds. But still, the college football playoffs, even though we've got a month to talk about it or 4 weeks to talk about it, and the bowl selections and the bowl matchups, would love to talk about that. So I'm going to be here. But yes, I'm disappointed that Urban Meyer, because of that, because I still think he's an excellent coach. He's had basically 2 games in the last 2 years that have brought him down. It's like any excellence in any field. We see it in people's criticism of any array of people in the spotlight, celebrities, people that have achieved greatness. When they don't reach the bar, they've established such a high bar that Urban Meyer goes 12-1, and there are people that want him out, people saying he's doing a horrible job when he goes 12-1, wins the Big Ten championship, beats his rival in resounding fashion. So Urban Meyer has set such a bar at Ohio State and prior to that, when he was hired at Ohio State, they had just lost to Michigan, and that loss was gone out of the minds of people because it was insignificant in terms of the season. The rivalry is always significant to Ohio State and Michigan fans, but that was wiped away by the news of Urban Meyer signing at Ohio State. I remember telling people that I knew that day their first interaction with me was met with, Ohio State just won a national championship. And it only took him a couple years, coming off a 6-7 season prior to Urban Meyer, to go undefeated, to come that close to getting to the BCS national championship game in 2013 and then winning it all in 2014. So there are a certain few criticisms you can make on the field about his performance in the last few years. The Clemson playoff loss and the couple losses to marginal teams or decent teams in Iowa and Purdue on the road the last 2 years that kept them out of the playoffs. That would be it. Other than that, he's winning 91% of his games. And the legacy at Ohio State has been phenomenal. Again, he did not close the deal a few times and was not given the opportunity to close the deal. That's the issue I have with the college football playoff, is situations like this, where TCU and Baylor could have been given an opportunity in 2014. They won a conference championship, or somebody between those two, the Big 12 should have decided. should have been given the opportunity, and we could go on down the line with a number of teams. And that's involved Ohio State, both from the positive standpoint for the Buckeyes and the negative standpoint of keeping them out. So they have benefited from the system. At least one time they did. The other time they won the Big Ten. They benefited from the system in 2016. They did not take advantage. They have been a victim of the system the last 2 seasons. All right. Appreciate all you guys making comments. I'm sure that there's a lot here for me specifically. But I apologize. I really need to run. I'm late and need to go. But I wanted to make this contact with everyone, considering the news and considering all that's going on with Urban Meyer announcing that he is stepping away from coaching, stepping away from Ohio State following the Rose Bowl against Washington on New Year's Day. We'll be back tonight, 9 o'clock Eastern time, to talk Ohio State football with Urban Meyer's announcement. Also, college football fans who don't care about Urban Meyer or Ohio State, please join us tonight at 9 o'clock. We will respond to your talk, your team, your matchup in the bowl play in the college football playoff. We will be here to discuss college football top to bottom right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We will see you tonight, Tuesday night, 9 o'clock Eastern time.